Well, hello, my dear friends. Justyn Smith here, and I want to thank you for click and play. Welcome back to the channel. The title and topic for our Through the Bible today is It Takes Time to Build. And we're still in 1 Kings, and the early part of 1 Kings is dealing with Solomon fulfilling and following through with David's desire to build a house for the Lord known as the temple. And so, you look behind me and you see all that you see back here. You see barbed wire that's spooled up there on the wall, and you see lots of different things that were used for plowing and tilling, if you can see some of those, and just the wagon wheels, just all different kinds of tools that were used to make sure that this place could go forward and you could live here. It took time to be able to use the tools that you see behind me. It took time to see things come forth from the fruit of the ground. It takes time to build something and then see results. And likewise in your life, in your family, in your ministry, it takes time. Don't give up. Keep to the work. We want to notice in 1 Kings chapter 6, number 1, it took 4 years for peace, for wisdom, and materials to be established. Notice what it says in verse 1. It came to pass in the 418th year of the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month Ziph, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. And then we go down to verse number 37. In the 4th year was the foundation of the house of the Lord laid in the month Ziph. And so when I say it took 4 years for peace, for wisdom, and for materials to be established, I want you to recognize it on this matter, okay? In the 4th year. And how many could there have been that knew that Solomon, the son of David, was to be the one who was to build the temple for the Lord? And Solomon obviously understood it was passed down to him. He knew it was something that his father desired, and David would have passed down such things. And we can go to those scriptures to understand that. But in a 4-year period, peace was established, okay? All of the enemies had kind of settled down, and God had given that peace. The wisdom, if you go back to those chapters where God asks Solomon what he desired, and Solomon wanted to know the difference between good and bad, the gift of discernment, as we called it. And then God gave Solomon great wisdom and a large heart. And then we looked at that chapter where there is a contact with Hiram for the lumber. And all of these things are coming together, and it's saying in the 4th year, and there was a span there of 4 years. It wasn't just Solomon has the kingdom and now Solomon is building. No. It took a bit of time for all of the plans to be put in place for the building project to even kick off and move forward, even though it had already begun and the wheels were already spinning, okay? Breaking ground day. Well, there's a lot that comes from all of the prep to the point of breaking ground, and then you're actually seeing things come to fruition. So it takes time to build. Then number 2, God was given the best. And we're probably not going to read all of these verses, but from verse number 2 through verse number 10, we recognize those things. Down to verse number 7, the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, made ready before it was brought thither, so that there was neither hammer nor axe nor tool of iron heard in the house while it was in building. It was a sacred place. And then in verse 9, so he built the house and finished it, and covered the house with beams and boards of cedar. And then he built chambers against the house, 5 cubits high, and they rested on the house with timber of cedar. And those were just a few verses to explain the best that was given. And there's lots of other verses that actually go into greater detail of the best laborers, the best materials. But we get a glimpse in the precision of the measurements. We get the understanding of how everything was hammered and chiseled and built in a different location and then brought on site, and there wasn't a hammer, there wasn't a chisel, there wasn't so much as a loud sound in that place when it came down to preparing the stones for the building of the house of the Lord. And therefore we gather and understand that God was given the best. Now this took a little time. And for those of you who understand building projects, I mean, even if it's just a little remodel, there are those who work fast and don't do a quality job, and then there are those who can work fast and do a quality job. But even still, there's something to say about somebody who takes their time, who makes sure and recognizes this thing isn't going to build itself, and we need to make sure we put thought in it, and we need to make sure that there's effort, and we want this to be quality. It is being built for the Lord. For those of you builders out there, could you imagine what it would be like? And maybe there are some job situations like this where for whatever reason you can't build something on site. I mean, it just takes that much longer. I mean, just think if your measurement's off and you've got to take that stone back out and then bring that stone back again. I mean, this is taking a lot longer, but it was worth it because the best was being given to God. Number 3, we see that Solomon received great encouragement during the building process. In verse 11, and the word of the Lord came to Solomon, saying. And as you consider the word of the Lord that comes to Solomon, there's some very encouraging things that are mentioned after this. We're not going to read every one of them, but how about verse 12 and verse 13? Concerning this house, which thou art in building, so God knows it's being built, if thou wilt walk in my statutes and execute my judgments and keep all my commandments to walk in them, then will I perform my word with thee, which I spake unto David thy father, and I will dwell among the children of Israel and will not forsake. I will not forsake my people Israel. That was encouraging, right? And that was just the shot he needed in his arm, okay? That opportunity to know that God is with him, that God understands what he is doing. God approves of it. And in fact, Solomon, you are the leader. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And if you will commit to me, and if you will stay faithful to me, I want you to know I'll be all over this thing. And I'll be all over your people. I will be with you. I am the Lord. Have you ever been in a situation where you were part of some building project and it was getting discouraging? Or maybe you're just kind of wondering, should I really be doing this? Imagine Solomon. I mean, he knows. I mean, this is something God wants him to do. They have the recorded documents, and he understands. David had the privilege of creating the plans, if you will. That's what God let him do. And so Solomon knows all of these things. But how encouraging it must have been when a word from the Lord came specifically for him. Imagine the zeal. Imagine the excitement. Imagine the joy. Guys, God spoke to me, and this is what he said, and this gives us excitement. This gives us encouragement. We must continue forward for the glory of God. He is worthy. Solomon received great encouragement during the building project. And that leads me to a fourth and last thought. The project was completed. Oh, happy day for any project that comes to completion. You know, at some point, and depending on where you're from and how much you know about old things and old buildings, you look at this thing and you say, well, it's just kind of, it's obviously open. And if I could paint a picture for you, it's open-ended on this side. And so it's more like a lean-to style shed, okay? It's got 3 walls and a roof. But at some point, the vision for this was made. At some point, the wood was cut down. It was then taken and created to the lengths and the shapes that were necessary to build this particular shed. Holes were digged in the ground for the purpose of putting the post vertical up. At some point, there was a roof that was laid on top of this place, and eventually this place became what it is, and it was completed, and then they moved on to something else. It was built for what was necessary in housing or sheltering. And through over the years, it's been used for different things. And now currently it's used just almost historical, right? Almost like a little museum piece, coming through and seeing all of these things that are just so unique to the history of this particular homestead. And what a blessing that is. But you can imagine what it was like for Solomon when the project was completed. Notice verse 14, so Solomon built the house and finished it. We can all be encouraged with that. Then down in verse 38, the 11th year, in the month Bul, which is the 8th month, was the house finished throughout, all the parts thereof, and according to all the fashion of it, so was he 7 years in building it. Could you imagine a 7-year building project? Now, some of us can understand what it's like to build something, but not entirely finish it. And then eventually, years later, decades later, finish that particular project, to its completion. But in Solomon's situation, from start to finish, 7 years, it was completed. And therefore we say once again, it takes time to build. That means there's going to need to be patience, especially when you're building for quality. You're going to have to recognize it's just one thing at a time. And maybe you've been involved in some building projects and there's been some kind of dead end that you have run into. And you're like, I don't know if I could ever get past this. And sometimes, you know what I mean, you've just had to back away, maybe go do something else and come back to this, or even the next day, and you just had renewed strength, renewed focus, and you were able to get to it. Could you imagine for 7 years, day after day, year after year, you're focused on building, you're encouraged with the word of the Lord, you keep to the faith, you stay faithful. It takes time to build. It takes time to build your family. It takes time to build your ministry. It takes time to build your life, but we can be confident that the Lord is still working on us. Let's keep on going for His glory. It takes time to build. And I hope this has been a challenge to you today. I hope that there's some way that you've been changed according to the ministry of the Word of God, and that you'll go forward for His honor and for His glory. He is worthy. My dear friends, if you have not subscribed, we would absolutely love it if you take some time to make that red subscribe button gray. And then there's that bell button. Click that. That helps you to be notified when we upload a new video. And currently, as best as we possibly can with all of our revival and evangelism travels, we are uploading on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday in the Psalms, Wednesday in the New Testament. Soon, we're looking at moving into Matthew, Mark, Luke, and then we will go forward from there. And then we are currently in the Old Testament in Fridays, which is today, which is currently in 1 Kings. And it is just an absolute blessing to have you listening in. That is an encouragement to us, even though we might not know who you are. Maybe we do. Give us a comment. Let us know. Thank you so much for listening in, and thank you for Click and Play. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.